Conditions of a Good Shepherd, Part 1. John 10 begins with Jesus declaring himself the Good Shepherd. He contrasts the Good Shepherd with the hireling, emphasizing that he is the Good Shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. However, most of us living in modern times are not involved in farming or herding, so we are not familiar with what a shepherd's duties entail. I am no expert in these matters either. But one day, while choosing books at a bookstore, I discovered a book written by someone who had first-hand experience as a shepherd. This book detailed Psalm 23, and through it, I gained many insights. I intend to explain what the duties of a shepherd are through the contents of this book, to fully understand why Jesus referred to himself as the Good Shepherd. Let's explore the duties of a shepherd as described in Psalms 23, 1-3. As you may know, Psalm 23 was written by David, who, like many young children of his time, tended to his family's sheep. He wrote Psalm 23 based on these experiences. When we think of Psalm 23, we often imagine Jesus holding a lamb to his chest in a lush meadow with a flock of sheep. However, creating such an idyllic scene requires much more effort and labor from the shepherd than one might think. The first verse of Psalm 23 starts with, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." David confesses that God is his shepherd. This phrase implies ownership, suggesting that Jehovah God is my owner. To elaborate, it means Jehovah is my owner, and he has paid a price to claim me as his own. A shepherd must first purchase sheep, and this involves paying a price. Through this confession, David clearly acknowledges that God has paid a price to make him his sheep. Even after David was anointed by Samuel to become king, it took over 8 years before he actually ascended to the throne, during which time he was pursued by Saul. Throughout these trying times, David recognized God's hand of help as the price of God's grace to take him as his own. Furthermore, David's declaration, "The Lord is my shepherd," holds another astonishing meaning. In livestock farming, it is common to tag each sheep or cow for identification. In ancient times, instead of tags, cows were branded, and since sheep's wool was used, their ears were cut into specific shapes as evidence of ownership. To be recognized as the shepherd's property, a sheep must bear the mark of its shepherd. Thus, David's confession, that the Lord is my shepherd, signifies that God has paid a price to claim him as his own, and that he bears the mark of God's ownership. While in David's case, this mark was guidance and protection, the same principle applies today. If we belong to God, we must also bear such marks of his ownership. Do you possess this mark? And what do you think this mark is? Today, this mark is evidenced by the Holy Spirit, who seals us in our hearts. If you belong to God, you should be able to recognize the presence of the Holy Spirit working and asserting within you. This presence of the Holy Spirit is the actual mark that signifies we are God's property. Reflect on whether God is your shepherd and whether you have this mark of God's ownership in your heart. One of the most important tasks in our lives is to become the possession of the Lord. Next time, I will discuss the efforts of the shepherd. May you have a blessed and joyful day in the Lord.
구독, 좋아요, 알림 설정 해주세요. Subscribe, like, set notifications.